Why did Rome fall? And why did Rome fall so quickly? I'm going to be talking about two factors that were very important to the fall of the Roman Empire: economic collapse and military collapse. These were not the only factors that led Rome to its fall, but they were very important. Economic collapse. The economy of Rome during its peak was very good. They had lots of money and were able to be wealthy. There was not inflation or price change throughout most of the empire's history. Then they stopped making their empire bigger, meaning that they would have to pay their troops more money than they had before because not being able to give them land because of their promise. So the government would lose lots of money. So they tried to counteract that by making their money/coins worth less. They did this by making the coins with metals that are worth less. This process is called debasement. The technical definition of debasement is the practice of lowering the value of currency. It usually happens with gold or silver coins. A coin is said to be debased if the quantity of gold, silver, or copper, or nickel is reduced. With the fall of the worth of the money, prices went up very fast. It changed a lot in one day. This left workers with money that isn't worth much. Because of their wages that were not keeping up with inflation, meaning that their money was worth less and less and less. This makes people not want to not spend. They want to save, so trade essentially stops. With no trade, Rome starts to lose the food supply that they have, which in turn makes prices go up even more. At this time, lots of people are starving. With no trade, the parts of the empire that cannot feed themselves start to riot. The riots meant that Rome would have to give money to those parts of the empire, leaving the empire with even less money. With all this combined, it left Rome with almost no money to defend itself or its borders, leaving barbarians to attack the borders of Rome. And when Rome cannot feed itself or pay for military, then it is easily crushed by tribes, or barbarians fighting them. Military collapse. The military of Rome was very organized, strong, and large. If the military was just like that, then how did it collapse? Well, in the Roman Empire, the military was organized to a great extent. And the military had two types of soldiers: citizens and non-citizens. Each were both loyal to Rome. The citizens because they were citizens, and they were paid, and they were promised land. Non-citizens because they were paid, promised land, and promised citizenship for them and their family. So it is easy to see why the military was very loyal to Rome, or at least at its peak. Then something happened in the Roman economy. It was starting to inflate, making prices go up, yet the military was still paid the same. So then more people would not want to join the military. This caused two things. You could not replace the people who were killed, and you cannot control the border as well. But the Romans still wanted their legions, the standard-sized military unit, to be full, so they started to hire mercenaries. They were barbarians who were paid. They were expensive, which in turn makes prices go up even more. The barbarians were also not loyal to Rome, so they would not fight as hard, letting the Romans to lose a lot more battles. And as more and more people were killed in the legions, in turn it became more and more mercenaries. This also means that the legions are less loyal to Rome overall, making the military effectively useless. With the military useless, Rome cannot control its borders. As soon as that happened, Rome was declining very fast. With this, Rome was doomed to fall. And it did, also with the help of some other factors. How did the factors of economic collapse and military collapse together to help make Rome collapse? When Rome started to debase their money, the money became worthless due to inflation. This meant that the military were paid with the same salary, but the salary that the soldiers were paid were fixed, making the money that they earned worthless. So the soldiers were not very happy or loyal to Rome. This also means that no one would join the military, so the government had to pay for mercenaries. The only way they could pay them is with their money that isn't worth much. So the barbarians would demand more money. The Roman government would give them more money. But they could only give them the money if they debased their currency even more, making the people in the empire angry. This would lead to revolts. This also meant that the military would be unhappy. This would make the military ultimately collapse. Could the United States have a similar fate with its military? Perhaps. The United States does have a lot of mercenaries, and a lot of them at that. It is on a ratio of 3 to 1. That means that there are a lot of mercenaries in the United States. That also means that the same thing could happen. The mercenaries are not loyal to the US at all. All they want is money. And in turn, that means that the mercenaries are going to fight for their life and not necessarily for the US. This might mean that if the US went to war, we might definitely be paying the price for it. As in, we would pay for them fighting. The price of the US military is extremely high. Right now, it's $601 billion to be exact. Now, this means that we are slightly weaker as a country, but I don't think this is a brink of a military collapse. Although, I could be completely wrong, because I can't predict the future. Could the United States have a potential economic collapse? It is more likely than a military collapse, because currently we are raising wage gaps. Now, I don't have a problem with people getting more currency so they can buy more goods. But the way we are currently fixing it is by increasing the pay of minimum wage workers. This in turn makes prices go up, and other people whose wages do not change cannot buy as many goods with the same amount of money. This means that people are less stable. It also means that the government will make more money and that it will just increase the inflation that we currently have. That process could be repeated and repeated and repeated until the material the money is worth is many times worth more than the gold it is representing. If you have that, your economy will collapse. This is what happened after World War I for Germany. What if the US faces military collapse and economic collapse? As we learned before, the US military is very expensive, and if we have an economic collapse, then we cannot pay for the military, and that could easily destroy a country when you have both of those at the same time. Or if you have a military collapse, that would then cost a lot of money that would trigger an economic collapse. My sources/citations. The end.